Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. I'm glad you found your way here. The world outside is often busy and loud, but here is a gentle place where things slow down. A space where curious minds can drift towards sleep, or simply explore ideas while resting. Tonight, we're not just talking about neurons and brain scans. We're stepping inside the mind itself, into the strange, luminous space where thoughts form, memories stir, and the feeling of being you comes alive. We'll explore 100 fascinating facts about consciousness, from the brain's hidden mechanisms to remarkable cases that challenge everything we think we know. Some of what you'll hear may sound familiar. Some may be so unexpected they stay with you long after you wake. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind or give you a gentle way to end your day, consider liking and subscribing or sharing your thoughts below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. Scientists still cannot agree on a single definition of consciousness. Ask 10 experts what consciousness is, and you might hear 10 different answers. Some define it simply as awareness of one's surroundings and internal thoughts. Others see it as a layered process, involving not just perception but self-reflection, memory, and the ability to imagine the future. Philosophers, neuroscientists, and psychologists often approach the topic from entirely different angles, using different language to describe what may or may not be the same thing. Even deciding whether animals, machines, or newborn infants are conscious can spark intense debate. The lack of consensus makes studying consciousness uniquely challenging. It's hard to measure something that can't be agreed upon in the first place. Despite advances in brain imaging and computing power, no single theory has united the field. For now, consciousness remains one of the most intriguing puzzles in science, and perhaps the most personal one we can explore. Your brain generates enough electrical activity to power a small light bulb. The human brain operates on electricity, not in the same way as a household device, but through electrochemical signals carried by billions of neurons. Each neuron generates tiny voltage changes as ions move in and out of the cell, creating the brain's signature electrical patterns. In total, this activity produces about 20 watts of power, enough to light a small bulb. What's remarkable is how much the brain accomplishes with so little energy. That modest electrical output is responsible for coordinating every thought, movement, sensation, and emotion. Even when you're sleeping, the brain never truly powers down, maintaining essential body functions and processing memories. Modern computers often require far more power to handle tasks far simpler than what your brain does in a fraction of a second. It's a testament to both the efficiency and the mystery of the biological machinery running your conscious life. Consciousness can return in the middle of surgery if anesthesia fails. For most people, general anesthesia feels like falling asleep instantly and waking up with no memory of what happened in between. But in rare cases, anesthesia awareness can occur when a patient regains consciousness during surgery. The experience can range from vague awareness of voices and pressure to feeling pain while being unable to move or speak due to muscle relaxants. Researchers estimate this happens in 1 to 2 cases per 1,000 surgeries involving general anesthesia. Factors like underdosing, patient metabolism, or unusually high resistance to anesthetic drugs can increase the risk. Modern monitoring techniques have reduced the likelihood, but no method is perfect. The phenomenon is unsettling not only for patients but also for anesthesiologists, because it highlights how much we still don't fully understand about the exact mechanisms of consciousness and how to reliably switch it off and on. The brain can stay aware for seconds after the heart stops, When the heart stops pumping blood, consciousness doesn't necessarily vanish instantly. Studies of cardiac arrest patients have shown that brain activity can persist for tens of seconds after circulation ceases. In some cases, survivors of near-death experiences have reported vivid perceptions and memories during this brief window, even describing events that occurred while they were clinically dead. Scientists think this lingering awareness may be due to the brain using its remaining oxygen and glucose reserves before shutting down. These final bursts of organized neural activity can produce unusual sensations, such as tunnels of light or heightened clarity. While this doesn't prove that consciousness survives death, it does suggest that the process of losing awareness is more gradual than we might assume, and that the brain's last moments may be far more complex than a simple off-KE switch. Some coma patients can communicate using brain scans alone. A coma is typically thought of as complete unconsciousness, but advanced imaging has revealed that some patients diagnosed as unresponsive still have islands of awareness. In specialized experiments, researchers have asked these patients to imagine playing tennis or walking through their home. Each mental task produces a distinct pattern of brain activity detectable by functional MRI. By assigning yes or no answers to specific imagery tasks, some patients have successfully communicated without speaking or moving. This breakthrough has profound implications for diagnosis and care, offering families a way to connect and giving patients a voice when their bodies cannot respond. It also forces scientists to rethink what it means to be conscious and reminds us that the line between awareness and unawareness can be far thinner than traditional bedside tests suggest. Blind sight allows people to detect objects they cannot see. Blind sight is a rare and fascinating condition in which people with damage to their primary visual cortex lose the ability to consciously see, yet can still respond to visual information. For example, a blind sight patient may correctly guess the location of an object or detect its movement, even though they report total blindness in that part of their visual field. Scientists believe this happens because visual signals can travel along alternative neural pathways that bypass the damaged region, reaching areas of the brain that guide movement and orientation without creating conscious vision. Blind sight challenges the idea that perception and awareness are inseparable, showing that the brain can process complex information without it ever entering the spotlight of consciousness. Split brain surgery can create two separate streams of awareness. Split brain surgery, once performed to treat severe epilepsy, severs the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of nerve fibers connecting the brain's two hemispheres. Patients who undergo this procedure can still function normally in most daily activities, but in laboratory tests, each hemisphere can process information independently. For example, if an image is shown only to the right hemisphere, which controls the left hand but not speech, the patient may be unable to name it, yet can draw it accurately with the left hand. This suggests that each hemisphere can hold its own version of awareness. The phenomenon raises deep questions. Are there now two minds sharing one body? Or does consciousness somehow remain unified despite the split? Certain drugs can erase memories without affecting intelligence. Some medications, particularly in the sedative and anesthetic family, can interfere with the brain's ability to form new memories while leaving other mental functions intact. Midazolam, for example, can make a person alert and conversational during a medical procedure, yet later they will remember nothing of the experience. This effect, called anterograde amnesia, targets the hippocampus, a region essential for consolidating short-term memories into long-term storage. While this property can be useful for preventing trauma or distress during surgery, it also highlights how memory and consciousness, though linked, are not identical. You can be fully aware in the moment, yet lose all trace of that awareness in the hours or days that follow. Some people experience complete loss of self during meditation. Certain advanced meditation practices, particularly in long retreats or deep states of concentration, can produce what practitioners describe as ego dissolution, the temporary disappearance of the sense of being a separate self. In these moments, perception may feel vast and unbounded, thoughts may slow or stop, and the distinction between self and world can blur or vanish entirely. Brain scans of experienced meditators show altered activity in regions linked to self-referential processing, such as the default mode network. While often described as peaceful or liberating, the experience can be disorienting for those unprepared for it. Studying these states offers a rare window into how flexible and fluid our sense of identity can be. The locked-in state traps a fully conscious mind in a paralyzed body. Locked-in syndrome is a rare condition, often caused by brainstem damage, in which a person loses nearly all voluntary muscle control while remaining fully conscious and aware. Most cannot speak, move, or even blink, though some retain limited eye movement. Communication becomes possible only through painstaking eye-tracking systems or blinking in response to yes or no questions. Despite the severity of the condition, cognitive abilities and personality often remain intact. For the person inside, it can feel like being trapped in a motionless body, a complete separation of mind and movement. This condition underscores the difference between consciousness and the ability to express it, and why modern neuroscience increasingly relies on technology to detect awareness when outward signs are absent. People can perform complex actions while asleep, including driving. Sleepwalking is a form of parasomnia, where the brain is in a mixed state between sleep and wakefulness. Most episodes involve simple behaviors, like walking around the house, but in rare cases, people have been known to cook meals, leave their homes, and even drive cars while still technically asleep. During these episodes, the brain's motor control systems are active, but higher reasoning and memory formation are largely offline. This is why sleepwalkers often have no memory of their actions afterward. The phenomenon shows that not all movement and decision-making require full conscious awareness. Complex routines can unfold purely on automatic processes. While fascinating, it can be dangerous, especially when a person engages with hazards in the environment without the judgment that comes from being fully awake. Sleep paralysis leaves you awake, but unable to move. Sleep paralysis occurs when the mind wakes up while the body is still in REM atonia, the natural paralysis that prevents you from acting out your dreams. People experiencing it find themselves fully conscious, able to see and hear, yet completely unable to move or speak. It can last from a few seconds to several minutes, and is often accompanied by vivid hallucinations, such as sensing a presence in the room or seeing shadowy figures. These sensations are thought to be dream imagery bleeding into wakefulness, amplified by the brain's fear response. Sleep paralysis is not dangerous in itself, but its intensity can be deeply unsettling. Understanding it as a temporary mismatch between brain and body states can help reduce fear, though in the moment, the sense of vulnerability can feel overwhelming. Time perception can slow dramatically in life-threatening events. Many people who have faced accidents, falls, or other life-threatening situations describe the experience as happening in slow motion. Scientists believe this is due to the brain's heightened attention and memory processing under stress. In moments of danger, the amygdala, a region involved in emotional responses, signals the brain to store more details per unit of time. Later, when recalling the event, these extra details make it seem as though more time passed than actually did. While perception slows, reaction speed doesn't necessarily increase. It's more about the brain stretching out the moment in memory. This time, distortion can be life-saving, helping you focus on critical details, but it also demonstrates how malleable our sense of time is under different states of consciousness. Psychedelics can temporarily dissolve the sense of self. Substances like LSD, psilocybin and DMT can induce a state known as ego dissolution, where the normal boundaries between self and environment blur or disappear. Users often report feeling a deep sense of unity with everything around them, as if the concept of I has been replaced by a broader awareness. Brain imaging studies suggest that psychedelics reduce activity in the default mode network, a set of brain regions linked to self-referential thinking. With this network dialed down, the mind may become less anchored to the personal narrative that usually defines consciousness. While the experience can be euphoric or enlightening, it can also be disorienting, and its long-term effects are still being studied. This temporary reshaping of awareness offers researchers valuable insights into how the brain constructs our sense of identity. Some brains can rewire themselves to recover from massive injury. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. After a stroke, traumatic brain injury, or surgical removal of brain tissue, surviving areas can sometimes take over functions once handled by damaged regions. This rewiring can occur through therapy, practice, and even spontaneous adaptation. For example, if one part of the motor cortex is injured, neighboring neurons can gradually learn to control the affected muscles. In cases of language loss, other areas of the brain can develop new pathways for speech. The extent of recovery depends on factors like age, health, and rehabilitation. But neuroplasticity demonstrates that the brain is far more adaptable than once thought. This capacity for self-repair is a crucial part of understanding how consciousness can persist and adapt despite physical damage. Brain damage can completely change personality overnight. Some brain injuries don't just affect memory or motor skills, they can alter personality so profoundly that friends and family feel they're dealing with a different person. One of the most famous cases is Phineas Gage, a 19th century railroad worker who survived an iron rod passing through his skull. He retained his intelligence and basic abilities, but those who knew him said he became impulsive, irritable, and unreliable. Damage to the frontal lobes, especially the prefrontal cortex, can disrupt decision-making, emotional regulation, and social behavior. These changes highlight how personality, something we often think of as fixed and deeply us, is also rooted in brain structures and chemistry. It's a sobering reminder that identity and consciousness are closely tied to the health and integrity of our neural systems. Phantom limb sensations trick the mind into feeling missing body parts. After an amputation, many people continue to feel sensations, sometimes even pain, in the missing limb. This phenomenon, known as phantom limb syndrome, occurs because the brain's map of the body doesn't update instantly after the loss. Neurons in the somatosensory cortex, which process touch and movement, can still be activated by signals from surrounding areas, creating the illusion that the limb is still there. In some cases, sensations are so vivid that people instinctively try to move or scratch the missing limb. Treatments like mirror therapy, which uses visual feedback to retrain the brain, can reduce discomfort. Phantom limbs reveal that our experience of the body is constructed in the brain and can persist even when physical reality changes. Some blind people can learn to see using clicks and echoes. Certain blind individuals develop a form of echolocation, producing mouth clicks or tapping a cane and listening to the echoes that bounce back from nearby objects. With training, they can judge distances, shapes, and even textures based on subtle differences in sound. Brain scans show that in skilled echolocators, parts of the visual cortex, normally used for processing sight, become active when interpreting these echoes. This adaptation demonstrates the brain's remarkable ability to repurpose unused regions for new sensory tasks. While echolocation doesn't replace vision in the traditional sense, it allows for navigation and spatial awareness far beyond what most sighted people might imagine possible without eyesight. The brain can create vivid hallucinations in complete silence and darkness. When deprived of sensory input for long periods, such as in a dark, soundproof room, the brain often begins generating its own sensations. People in sensory deprivation environments may see shifting patterns of light, hear phantom sounds, or even experience complex scenes and voices. These hallucinations happen because the brain is constantly predicting and filling in sensory information without real input. Those predictions can run wild. While short periods of sensory isolation can be relaxing, prolonged deprivation can become disorienting or unsettling. This response highlights how much of conscious perception is actively constructed rather than passively received. Lucid dreamers can communicate with scientists while asleep. Lucid dreaming occurs when a person becomes aware that they're dreaming and can sometimes control the dream's events. In recent studies, researchers have found ways to communicate with lucid dreamers in real time. Dreamers are given simple yes or no questions while in REM sleep, and they respond by moving their eyes in prearranged patterns or making specific facial twitches. These experiments prove that two-way communication is possible during a dream, opening up new avenues for studying consciousness in altered states. It's a remarkable demonstration that awareness isn't limited to waking life, and that even in the middle of a dream, a part of the mind can stay tethered to the outside world. Consciousness can be temporarily erased during certain epileptic seizures. Not all epileptic seizures involve dramatic convulsions. Some, known as absence seizures or complex partial seizures, can briefly shut down conscious awareness while leaving the person physically still or performing small, automatic actions. From the outside, it might look like the person has simply paused mid-sentence or is staring into space. Inside, there is often no memory of the episode at all. These events can last only a few seconds, but completely remove conscious experience during that time. Brain recordings show sudden, synchronized electrical activity sweeping through certain neural networks, disrupting normal patterns required for awareness. While the person quickly returns, they may have no idea that time has passed. Such seizures demonstrate that consciousness can be switched off and on in a matter of moments without stopping other brain functions like breathing, posture, or even basic movement. Deep brain stimulation can switch awareness on and off. Deep brain stimulation (DBs) involves implanting electrodes into specific brain regions to deliver precise electrical pulses. Originally developed to treat movement disorders like Parkinson's disease, DBs has also shown striking effects on consciousness in certain patients. In rare cases, stimulation of the thalamus, a major relay hub for sensory signals, has restored awareness in people previously in minimally conscious states. Conversely, stimulating some areas can momentarily disrupt awareness, almost like flipping a switch. These findings suggest that consciousness depends on a delicate balance of activity across interconnected brain networks, and that manipulating these networks electrically can profoundly alter mental states. While DBs is not a cure for disorders of consciousness, it offers valuable insight into the circuitry that supports our sense of being awake and aware. Narcolepsy can cause people to collapse directly into REM sleep. Narcolepsy is a neurological disorder that disrupts the brain's regulation of sleep and wakefulness. One of its most dramatic symptoms is cataplexy, sudden muscle weakness triggered by strong emotions, such as laughter or surprise. In some cases, a person can transition directly from wakefulness into REM sleep, bypassing the gradual descent through lighter sleep stages. During REM, the body is naturally paralyzed to prevent acting out dreams, so an abrupt entry into this state can cause an unexpected collapse. Despite appearances, the person remains conscious during cataplexy episodes, but in narcoleptic sleep attacks, awareness is quickly replaced by vivid dream imagery. Studying narcolepsy has given researchers clues about how the brain switches between different states of consciousness and why these transitions can sometimes go wrong. In rare cases, people can hear colors and taste shapes. Synesthesia is a neurological phenomenon in which stimulation of one sense automatically triggers perceptions in another. While the most common forms involve seeing colors when hearing sounds or associating numbers with specific hues, some rare cases are even more unusual. A person might taste flavors when touching certain textures, or hear specific pitches when looking at bright colors. Brain imaging studies show that in synesthetes, sensory regions are more strongly interconnected, allowing signals to cross between areas that are normally separate. For those who experience it, synesthesia is consistent and involuntary. The same sound always produces the same color, the same shape, the same taste. While it can make the world feel richer and more layered, it also raises questions about how much of perception is universal and how much is constructed uniquely in each mind. Some people's memories let them relive any day of their lives in detail. A handful of individuals have what's called highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, the ability to recall the events of almost any day in their lives with astonishing clarity. Ask them about a random date from decades ago, and they can describe the weather, what they wore, and what they were doing, often with more detail than a diary could hold. Brain scans suggest subtle differences in regions involved in memory storage and retrieval, though the exact cause of HSAM is still unknown. While this ability might sound like a gift, many with HSAM say it can be overwhelming, as unwanted memories are just as vivid as pleasant ones. The condition offers scientists a living example of how memory and consciousness intertwine, and what happens when the brain's recall systems operate at their most extreme. Hypnosis can block pain without medication. Hypnosis is a state of focused attention and increased suggestibility that can be guided by a trained practitioner. In medical settings, it has been used to help patients undergo dental work, minor surgery, or childbirth without conventional anesthesia. Under hypnosis, a person can be given suggestions to reinterpret pain sensations, reduce anxiety, or feel numbness in specific areas of the body. Brain imaging shows that hypnosis can alter activity in pain processing regions, reducing the emotional and sensory components of discomfort. While not everyone responds equally well, for those who do, hypnosis demonstrates that perception is not fixed. The mind can reshape its own experience of pain through expectation, focus, and belief. Placebos can trigger real physical healing in the brain and body. The placebo effect occurs when a person's symptoms improve after receiving a treatment with no active ingredient, simply because they believe it will help. Far from being just in the mind, placebo responses involve measurable changes in brain chemistry. For example, believing you've taken a painkiller can prompt the brain to release natural opioids, reducing discomfort. Placebos have been shown to affect conditions ranging from depression to Parkinson's disease by tapping into the brain's own healing systems. While this effect is not a substitute for proven medical treatments, it reveals how powerful expectations and belief can be in shaping conscious experience and physical health. Studying it could help researchers develop therapies that harness these mechanisms more directly. Biofeedback training lets people control heart rate and temperature. Biofeedback uses sensors to provide real-time data about functions we normally can't control consciously, such as heart rate, skin temperature, or muscle tension. By watching this feedback and adjusting breathing, focus, or muscle relaxation, people can learn to influence these processes directly. With practice, biofeedback can be used to reduce stress, manage chronic pain, and even improve athletic performance. Some advanced practitioners can warm their hands by several degrees or slow their heart rate to levels typical of deep meditation. This ability shows that the line between conscious and unconscious body control is more flexible than most people realize, and that awareness, once paired with the right tools, can reach into areas of physiology that usually operate without our input. Prolonged isolation can cause the mind to lose its sense of time. When humans are cut off from external cues like daylight, clocks, and human interaction, their internal sense of time can quickly drift. In experiments where volunteers lived in isolated environments for weeks or months, many lost track of the day-night cycle and began keeping much longer or shorter days without realizing it. Some reported feeling as though only a few days had passed when in fact weeks had gone by. The brain relies heavily on environmental signals to anchor its internal clock, and without them, consciousness can begin to drift into its own rhythm. This effect has important implications for astronauts, submarine crews, and others who work in closed artificial environments. Some people remember events that never happened, with complete conviction. False memories are recollections of events that feel real but never occurred, or occurred differently than remembered. These can arise naturally, through the brain's tendency to fill in missing details, or be implanted intentionally through suggestion. Experiments have shown that people can be led to remember entire fictional events, such as being lost in a mall as a child, with high confidence. Brain scans of false memory recall often resemble those of true memories, suggesting the brain uses similar mechanisms to retrieve both. This blurring of reality and imagination demonstrates that conscious experience is not a perfect record of the past, but an ongoing reconstruction, vulnerable to error at every stage. Consciousness may depend on brain connections, not just size. Brain size alone isn't a reliable predictor of conscious complexity. Whales and elephants have larger brains than humans, yet humans possess far denser and more efficient neural connections. It's the organization of these pathways, how quickly and effectively information moves between brain regions, that seems to matter most. Neural efficiency allows the integration of sensory input, memory, and decision-making into a coherent experience of the world. A smaller brain with wheel-optimized connections can outperform a larger, less connected one in certain cognitive tasks. This is why some birds and primates, despite having smaller brains, display problem-solving abilities comparable to young humans. Studying these differences suggests consciousness may emerge less from neuron count and more from the brain's ability to coordinate vast networks of information rapidly and smoothly. In other words, wiring may be the true foundation of awareness. The smallest known conscious brain belongs to an insect. Honeybees and other insects have tiny brains, yet they perform tasks suggesting a form of awareness. A bee's brain contains fewer than 1 million neurons, vastly fewer than humans, but still manages complex behaviors. Bees can navigate long distances, recognize individual faces, and communicate through intricate waggle dances to share food locations. They've even been shown to understand abstract concepts like same and different, which requires flexible thinking. While scientists debate whether this counts as consciousness, the abilities go far beyond simple reflexes. These miniature brains highlight that mental sophistication doesn't always require massive neural hardware. Studying insects provides clues about how small systems can still integrate information, make decisions, and adapt to changing circumstances, abilities we often associate with far larger, more complex spirale brains. Octopuses have neurons distributed throughout their arms. Unlike humans, octopuses don't keep most of their nervous system in their head. Roughly 2/3 of their neurons are located in their arms, giving each limb the ability to sense, taste, and coordinate movement independently. An octopus arm can react to stimuli and manipulate objects even when detached from the body, a startling level of autonomy. This distributed control means an octopus may experience the world in a way entirely unlike ours, with multiple semi-independent processing centers working together. It challenges our human-centered models of consciousness, which assume a single, centralized brain running the show. By studying octopuses, scientists gain insight into how intelligence and awareness might develop in organisms with completely different neural architectures, perhaps hinting at how alien life could think. Some birds show problem-solving skills comparable to young children. Crows, ravens, and parrots demonstrate advanced cognitive abilities despite having much smaller brains than mammals. New Caledonian crows have been observed bending pieces of wire into hooks to retrieve food, tool-making that requires foresight and planning. African grey parrots have learned to understand numbers, colors, and even the concept of zero. These skills suggest a level of mental flexibility and problem-solving ability once thought unique to humans and great apes. Birds achieve this with a highly efficient brain structure called the pallium, which packs neurons densely and connects them in complex ways. Their abilities show that advanced problem-solving and perhaps even forms of conscious awareness can evolve in species with very different brain anatomy from ours. Machines can simulate human speech without any awareness. Modern artificial intelligence can carry on conversations, answer questions, and even generate creative writing. These systems rely on statistical patterns in massive datasets, predicting which words are most likely to come next. While their responses can sound thoughtful or even emotional, there's no subjective experience behind them, no internal sense of meaning. This distinction between simulating understanding and actually having it is central to debates about machine consciousness. A machine can mimic human-like output perfectly, but without awareness, it's simply processing symbols without knowing what they represent. This highlights how behavior alone can't always reveal whether consciousness is present. The Chinese room argument questions whether computers can truly think. Philosopher John Searle's Chinese room thought experiment imagines a person who doesn't understand Chinese, locked in a room with instructions for manipulating Chinese characters. From outside, the responses seem fluent, but inside, there's no comprehension, only rule following. Searle's point is that computers could be operating in the same way, processing inputs and outputs without any real understanding. This challenges the idea that producing correct answers is enough to prove awareness. The argument remains influential in philosophy of mind, raising the question, does a system need subjective experience to be considered intelligent, or is behavior alone enough? The hard problem of consciousness remains unsolved after decades of debate. Philosopher David Chalmers coined the term hard problem to describe the challenge of explaining why physical brain processes produce subjective experiences. Science can map which areas of the brain activate when we see colors or feel emotions, but it can't explain why those processes feel like something from the inside. This gap between objective measurement and subjective experience has resisted decades of research. Some think the solution will come from better neuroscience. Others believe it may require a radical new understanding of reality itself. Until it's solved, the hard problem remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. Theories like panpsychism suggest awareness exists in all matter. Panpsychism proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, present in some form in all matter, from humans and animals to rocks and particles. Proponents argue this avoids the hard problem by assuming awareness doesn't need to emerge suddenly from complexity. Critics point out that this idea is difficult to test and risks stretching the definition of consciousness too far. Still, it's gaining attention among some philosophers and scientists who see it as a possible bridge between physical processes and subjective experience. Quantum theories propose that consciousness arises from subatomic processes. Some researchers suggest that quantum mechanics may play a role in consciousness, with microscopic events inside neurons influencing mental states. The Autor theory proposes that quantum processes in microtubules, structural components of cells, could contribute to awareness. This is controversial because the brain's warm biological environment is thought to disrupt delicate quantum states. While there's little direct evidence so far, exploring these ideas keeps open the possibility that consciousness could be tied to the universe's most fundamental physical laws. Many scientists consider quantum consciousness unlikely. The majority of neuroscientists reject quantum theories of consciousness, arguing that classical physics explains brain function sufficiently. Quantum effects in biology have been observed in areas like photosynthesis, but applying them to complex mental processes is a far greater leap. Current brain models can account for perception, memory, and decision-making without invoking quantum mechanics. Still, the debate persists, partly because the mystery of consciousness is so deep that even unlikely explanations continue to draw interest. Brain waves coming different speeds linked to mental states. Electrical activity in the brain occurs in rhythmic patterns known as brain waves. These waves are classified by frequency, measured in cycles per second hertz, and each type is linked to different mental states. Fast waves tend to appear during active thinking, while slower ones dominate during relaxation or deep sleep. Scientists can measure brain waves using electroencephalography, EEG, placing electrodes on the scalp to detect subtle voltage changes. This technology reveals that our mental state is never static. The brain constantly shifts between rhythms depending on what we're doing and feeling. The relationship between these frequencies and consciousness suggests that awareness is not one thing, but a dynamic pattern that changes throughout the day, from the rapid bursts of creativity to the slow, steady pulses of AR. Deep rest. Gamma waves are found in problem-solving and memory processing. Gamma waves are the fastest brain waves, cycling more than 30 times per second. They're associated with high-level cognitive functions such as complex problem-solving, memory recall, and the integration of information from multiple senses. When you have an aha moment, suddenly connecting two ideas, gamma activity often spikes. These waves are thought to help synchronize different regions of the brain, binding together separate pieces of information into a unified perception. Interestingly, experienced meditators sometimes produce unusually high gamma activity, suggesting that certain mental training can influence these patterns. While gamma waves are not the sole determinant of intelligence or creativity, they appear to play a key role in the fluid, interconnected nature of conscious thought. Alpha waves appear in relaxed wakefulness. Alpha waves are slower than gamma, cycling around 8 to 12 times per second. They're most prominent when you're awake but calm, such as during quiet reflection or just before falling asleep. Alpha activity often increases when you close your eyes and reduce visual input, signaling a shift into a more internally focused state. These waves are linked to reduced stress, enhanced creativity, and improved learning, possibly by filtering out irrelevant sensory information. Practices like meditation and deep breathing can boost alpha wave activity, which may explain their calming effects on the mind. For neuroscientists, alpha waves are a window into how the brain regulates the balance between alert engagement with the outside world and restful inward attention. Theta waves are linked to dreaming and creativity. Theta waves oscillate more slowly, 4 to 8 times per second, and are most common during light sleep, REM dreaming, and deep meditation. They're often associated with vivid imagery, daydreaming, and spontaneous creative ideas. In these states, the brain seems to wander freely, making unexpected connections between memories and concepts. Some people deliberately enter theta-rich states through meditation or hypnosis to encourage creative problem-solving. Because theta waves are linked to the brain's default mode network, They may also play a role in processing emotions and integrating experiences into long-term memory. This balance of imagination, reflection, and memory makes theta activity a fascinating component of consciousness research. Delta waves dominate in deep, dreamless sleep. Delta waves are the slowest brain waves, cycling less than 4 times per second. They're most prominent during the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, when the body repairs tissue, strengthens the immune system, and consolidates certain types of memories. In this state, conscious awareness fades almost completely, yet the brain remains highly active in maintaining essential bodily functions. High delta activity is also seen in infants and young children whose brains are developing rapidly. For adults, adequate time in delta sleep is essential for physical recovery and mental health. Disruption of this stage can leave you feeling unrefreshed, even after a full night's rest. The brain produces electrical ripples when forming memories. When the brain stores new information, it generates brief bursts of high-frequency electrical activity known as ripples. These events occur primarily in the hippocampus, a region critical for memory formation and help replay and strengthen recent experiences. Ripple activity is especially strong during slow-wave sleep, when the brain consolidates memories for long-term storage. Scientists believe these electrical ripples allow different parts of the brain to synchronize, reinforcing neural connections. In animal studies, disrupting ripples can impair learning, while enhancing them may improve memory retention. Understanding these patterns offers potential new approaches for treating memory disorders. Hallucinatory states can be triggered by oxygen deprivation. When the brain receives insufficient oxygen, a condition called hypoxia, perception can change dramatically. People may experience bright flashes, tunnel vision, or even complex hallucinations. This can happen during high-altitude climbing, deep diving, or medical emergencies. Reduced oxygen disrupts normal neural activity, particularly in regions that process vision and maintain orientation. These unusual perceptions are often accompanied by confusion, dizziness, or a sense of detachment from reality. While typically dangerous, studying these altered states helps researchers understand how fragile conscious perception can be when the brain's basic needs are compromised. Astronauts have reported vivid dreams and hallucinations in space. Life aboard the International Space Station can alter perception in unexpected ways. Astronauts have described unusually vivid dreams, flashes of light when their eyes are closed, and occasionally hearing phantom sounds. Some of these experiences are caused by cosmic rays, high-energy particles striking the retina, while others may be linked to altered sleep cycles and the psychological effects of isolation. Microgravity also changes how fluid moves in the body, potentially influencing brain function. These space-specific experiences give scientists a unique perspective on how consciousness adapts to extreme environments far beyond Earth. Microdosing psychedelics can subtly alter cognitive patterns. Microdosing involves taking very small, non-hallucinogenic amounts of psychedelic substances like LSD or psilocybin. Users report improved mood, enhanced focus, and increased creativity without the intense visual or emotional effects of a full dose. Early research suggests microdosing may slightly alter connectivity between brain networks, allowing more flexible patterns of thought. However, much of the evidence is anecdotal, and placebo effects can be strong. Controlled studies are underway to determine whether the benefits are real, and if so, how they work. The practice remains controversial, but it offers a rare opportunity to explore mild, sustained changes in conscious processing. Some people experience flow states where time seems to disappear. Flow is a mental state in which a person becomes fully absorbed in an activity, losing track of time and self-awareness. It often occurs during challenging but enjoyable tasks, like playing music, painting, or engaging in sports. where skill and difficulty are perfectly balanced. Brain studies suggest flow involves reduced activity in the default mode network, which is associated with self-reflection, and increased coordination between motor and attention systems. The result is a sense of effortlessness, heightened focus, and intrinsic reward. Flow states show how consciousness can be tuned so precisely that the rest of the world seems to fade away. Certain migraines can cause temporary distortions in perception. Some migraine sufferers experience auras, sensory disturbances that can occur before or during a headache. In rare cases, these auras dramatically alter perception. Straight lines may appear wavy, objects can seem larger or smaller than they are, and familiar faces may look distorted. These changes are thought to result from waves of electrical activity spreading across the visual cortex, temporarily disrupting normal processing. The effect can be unsettling, but it usually fades within an hour. While migraines are primarily known for their pain, these perceptual shifts reveal how easily the brain's interpretation of reality can be altered. Studying them helps scientists understand the fragile balance of neural activity that produces stable, continuous consciousness, and what happens when that balance is disrupted, even briefly. Déjà vu may be a glitch in the brain's memory processing. Déjà vu, the eerie feeling that you've experienced a moment before, is surprisingly common. One leading theory suggests it happens when the brain briefly misroutes sensory input, sending it to the memory system before conscious awareness. This creates the illusion that the current experience is a recalled memory, even though it's happening for the first time. Another possibility is that déjà vu results from two parallel processing streams in the brain briefly falling out of sync. While most episodes are harmless and last only seconds, déjà vu can occur more frequently in people with certain types of epilepsy, offering researchers a chance to study it under controlled conditions. Understanding déjà vu may offer broader insights into how memory and present moment awareness are linked. Jamais vu creates the opposite effect. Familiar things feel unfamiliar. Jamais vu is the strange counterpart to déjà vu. Instead of a new moment feeling oddly familiar, something well-known suddenly seems strange or unfamiliar. You might look at a common word until it stops making sense, or walk through your own home and briefly feel lost. Scientists believe jamais vu occurs when the brain's recognition systems momentarily fail, interrupting the automatic sense of familiarity. It can be triggered intentionally through repetition, or it may appear in certain neurological conditions. Though usually fleeting, jamais vu reveals that our perception of familiarity is an active mental process, and like any process, it can be disrupted, changing how we experience even the most ordinary prayer. Surroundings. The brain can reconstruct the present from slightly delayed signals. It takes time for light to reach your eyes, sound to reach your ears, and sensory information to be processed by the brain. Yet you experience the world as if everything is happening instantly. To achieve this, the brain constantly integrates slightly delayed signals from different senses into a single unified now. If the delays become too large, through technology, injury, or experimental manipulation, the illusion breaks, and events no longer feel synchronized. This reconstruction of the present shows that consciousness isn't a raw feed of sensory data, but a carefully assembled version of reality designed to feel seamless. In blending illusions, the mind smooths over missing information. Our senses don't capture every detail of the world around us, but the brain fills in gaps automatically, creating a continuous experience. In certain visual illusions, moving objects may disappear briefly, yet we still perceive smooth motion because the brain blends past and future information. This process helps maintain stability in a constantly changing environment, but also means our conscious perception can be subtly inaccurate without us realizing it. Studying blending illusions shows how much of awareness is about prediction, the brain using prior knowledge to create the most likely picture of what's happening, even when data is incomplete. Near-death experiences can include feelings of peace and detachment. People who come close to dying sometimes report vivid experiences, floating above their bodies, moving through a tunnel toward light, or feeling an overwhelming sense of calm. These sensations may be linked to changes in brain chemistry and electrical activity caused by extreme stress or lack of oxygen. While interpretations vary, from biological explanations to spiritual beliefs, the consistency of these reports across cultures makes them a significant subject of study. Understanding near-death experiences may help scientists learn how consciousness operates at the edge of life and death. Some people experience full life reviews in seconds. In rare moments of extreme danger, individuals have described seeing their life flash before their eyes. This phenomenon can include vivid recollections of events spanning decades, often with strong emotional detail. Researchers believe this may result from the brain rapidly activating memory networks under stress, possibly as part of a survival mechanism. Although the exact trigger is unclear, the speed and clarity of these life reviews suggest that the brain can access and process enormous amounts of stored information in very little time. Studying this effect could shed light on how memories are organized and retrieved. The sense of self may be a constant brain-built illusion. Neuroscientists increasingly view the self as a mental construct, a model the brain continuously updates to predict and control behavior. This model integrates sensory input, memories, and goals into a stable-seeming identity. Yet it can be disrupted by injury, mental illness, or certain drugs, revealing its constructed nature. Conditions like depersonalization disorder, where people feel detached from themselves, show that the self is not fixed but fluid. If the self is an illusion, it's one the brain works hard to maintain, because without it, navigating the world becomes far more difficult. Even simple organisms show rudimentary decision-making. Single-celled organisms like amoebas and bacteria lack nervous systems, yet they can move toward food sources, avoid harmful environments, and adapt to changes. These behaviors are driven by chemical signaling rather than conscious thought, but they show that basic decision-making doesn't require a brain. Studying these organisms offers clues about the evolutionary steps that may have led to more complex forms of awareness. They demonstrate that purposeful behavior is a spectrum, and consciousness may be just one point along it. Slime molds can navigate mazes without a nervous system. Slime molds are single-celled organisms that can grow into sprawling networks. In experiments, they have been placed in mazes with food at 2 exits. Over time, the slime mold retracts from dead ends and builds the shortest possible path between the food sources, effectively solving the maze. This ability arises from chemical feedback and growth patterns, not neurons, yet it resembles problem-solving. Such behavior challenges our definitions of intelligence and decision-making, showing that even life without a brain can adapt in surprisingly efficient ways. Your brain keeps functioning during light sleep stages. Light sleep, which occurs during stages 1 and 2 of the sleep cycle, is not a complete shutdown of consciousness. The brain continues to process external sounds, body sensations, and even fragments of conversation. This is why you might wake easily during light sleep if someone says your name. EEG readings show a mix of slower brain waves with occasional bursts of faster activity called sleep spindles. These spindles are thought to help block out irrelevant sensory input while still keeping you responsive to important signals, such as a baby crying or an alarm sounding. Light sleep plays a crucial role in transitioning between wakefulness and deeper stages of rest, and it may also be a time when the brain rehearses certain memories, preparing them for consolidation later in the night. Sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations after just a few days. Staying awake for prolonged periods doesn't just cause fatigue, it can profoundly alter perception. After about 72 hours without sleep, many people begin experiencing visual distortions, shadowy figures in peripheral vision, or even complex hallucinations. These occur because the brain struggles to maintain stable processing without the restorative effects of sleep, particularly in areas that regulate attention and sensory integration. In extreme cases, sleep deprivation can trigger paranoia or symptoms resembling acute psychosis. The hallucinations typically vanish once normal sleep resumes, but the experience shows how essential rest is for maintaining coherent, reliable consciousness. Long-term sleep loss can resemble psychosis. Chronic sleep deprivation over weeks or months can cause severe cognitive and emotional changes. People may experience confusion, memory lapses, heightened anxiety, and a distorted sense of reality. The brain's prefrontal cortex, vital for decision-making and impulse control, is especially vulnerable to prolonged lack of rest. Over time, sleep loss can produce symptoms similar to psychotic disorders, including delusions and auditory hallucinations. These effects underscore the link between sleep and mental health, and why adequate rest is essential for sustaining normal consciousness. In many cases, restoring healthy sleep patterns can reverse these symptoms, but extended deprivation can have lasting impacts on brain function. Chronic insomnia can disrupt emotional regulation. Insomnia isn't just about feeling tired. It can fundamentally change how the brain processes emotions. Studies show that people with chronic insomnia have heightened activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat detection center, and reduced communication with the prefrontal cortex, which normally helps regulate emotional responses. This imbalance can make daily stressors feel overwhelming and reduce resilience to negative experiences. Over time, poor sleep can contribute to mood disorders like anxiety and depression. Treating insomnia often leads to measurable improvements in emotional stability, suggesting that healthy sleep is one of the brain's most important tools for keeping feelings in balance. The brain actively cleans itself during deep sleep. During the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, the brain's glymphatic system becomes highly active, flushing out metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. This cleaning process involves cerebrospinal fluid flowing through brain tissue, clearing away potentially harmful substances like beta-amyloid proteins, which are linked to Alzheimer's disease. The system works far more efficiently during sleep than when awake, possibly because neural activity slows, allowing space for fluid movement. This nightly maintenance cycle highlights why deep, restorative sleep is essential not just for memory and mood, but for long-term brain health. REM sleep may help integrate emotional memories. Rapid eye movement REM sleep is the stage most associated with vivid dreaming, but it also plays a key role in processing emotional experiences. During REM, activity in the amygdala and other emotion-related brain regions remains high, while stress chemicals like norepinephrine are suppressed. This unique state may allow the brain to revisit emotional events in a safe context, reducing their intensity over time. In this way, REM sleep acts like an overnight therapy session, helping integrate challenging experiences into our broader life story without overwhelming the waking mind. The content of dreams can be influenced from the outside. While dreaming, the brain remains partly open to sensory input from the environment. Researchers have shown that introducing specific sounds, lights, or smells during sleep can subtly shape the storyline of a dream. For example, playing the sound of running water might cause a dream of walking by a river, while the scent of roses could lead to more pleasant dream imagery. This external influence doesn't always work and is more effective in lighter stages of sleep or during REM. The phenomenon suggests that dreams are a blend of internal memory processing, and external cues, a reminder that consciousness, even in sleep, is rarely sealed off from the world. Certain sounds or smells introduced during sleep affect dream storylines. Experiments using scent cues like peppermint or smoke have shown that these inputs can change the emotional tone or direction of a dream. Pleasant smells often produce more positive dream experiences, while unpleasant ones can lead to unsettling imagery. Similarly, soft music or gentle sound effects can guide dream themes without waking the sleeper. These findings open possibilities for influencing dreams for therapy, creativity, or stress relief, though the technique remains experimental. They also demonstrate how porous the boundary between sleeping and waking consciousness can be. People in REM sleep can respond to yes or no questions. Recent research has shown that lucid dreamers in REM sleep can communicate with experimenters in real time. By using agreed-upon movements or subtle facial twitches, participants can answer yes or no questions while still inside the dream. This breakthrough provides a rare opportunity to study dream consciousness directly, instead of relying solely on people's memories after waking. It also suggests that parts of the brain involved in decision-making and external communication can remain active even in the depths of sleep. Sleep talking can reveal thoughts you didn't mean to share. Somniloquy or sleep talking can occur during any stage of sleep and often happens without the person remembering it. Speech can range from mumbling and single words to full sentences, and while it's usually harmless, it occasionally reveals personal thoughts or feelings. Because sleep talking is unfiltered by waking self-control, it has fascinated researchers interested in the unconscious mind. However, interpreting its content is tricky, as the words may be fragments of dreams or random neural activity. Sleep talking highlights the complex overlap between sleeping and waking brain states. Stroke patients can experience sudden shifts in consciousness. A stroke disrupts blood flow to part of the brain, cutting off oxygen and nutrients. When areas critical to awareness are affected, the result can be sudden changes in consciousness, from confusion to complete loss of responsiveness. In severe cases, a stroke can induce coma or vegetative states, while milder ones may cause brief disorientation or lapses in memory. The type and severity of change depend on which brain regions are impacted. For example, strokes in the brainstem can impair wakefulness entirely, while strokes in the parietal or frontal lobes can alter perception, attention, and self-awareness. Recovery varies widely. Some people regain normal consciousness within hours, while others take much longer or never fully recover. These cases reveal just how dependent our awareness is on precise blood flow and neural activity, and how quickly it can change when those systems are interrupted. Alien hand syndrome makes a limb act without permission. Alien hand syndrome is a rare condition where one hand seems to act independently, performing movements the person did not intend. It's usually caused by damage to the corpus callosum, frontal lobe or parietal lobe, which disrupts coordination between intention and motor control. People with the condition may watch their own hand button a shirt, close a drawer, or even undo actions the other hand just performed, all without consciously deciding to move it. The hand feels possessed, yet the movements are purposeful, not random. While the person can see and feel the limb, they cannot stop its actions through willpower alone. This strange separation between intention and movement offers a striking example of how parts of the brain can generate complex, goal-directed actions without involving the conscious mind, and how our sense of control is ultimately built on fragile neural cooperation. Rare disorders can make people believe they are already dead. Some individuals develop Cotard syndrome, a rare psychiatric condition in which they believe they are dead, do not exist, or have lost their internal organs. It often appears alongside severe depression, psychosis, or neurological conditions like brain injury or dementia. Patients may refuse to eat because they believe they no longer need nourishment, or they may insist that their body is decaying. Brain imaging suggests abnormal activity in areas involved in self-awareness and emotional regulation. While uncommon, Cotard's syndrome reveals how our sense of being alive, something we take for granted, is a mental construct built on continuous brain feedback. When that system malfunctions, even the most fundamental truths about existence can be questioned. Treatment usually involves medication, psychotherapy, and addressing any underlying neurological issues, but recovery can be gradual. Cotard's delusion removes the sense of being alive. Cotard's delusion, named after French neurologist Jules Cotard, is one of the most extreme disturbances of self-awareness. People with this condition may insist they are missing organs, that their blood has dried up, or that they have already died. In some cases, they claim the world around them is no longer real. The condition is linked to abnormalities in brain areas responsible for integrating sensory input with emotional meaning. Without this integration, even accurate sensory information fails to create the normal sense of presence and vitality. Cotard's delusion is rare but often severe, requiring urgent psychiatric care. For researchers, it's a stark reminder that consciousness isn't just about processing sensory data. It's about assigning meaning to it. And when that meaning collapses, the self can vanish from one's own perception. Capgras delusion makes familiar people seem like imposters. In Capgras delusion, a person becomes convinced that someone close to them, often a spouse, friend, or family member, has been replaced by an identical-looking imposter. This condition is believed to stem from a disconnect between facial recognition areas and emotional response centers in the brain. While the patient can consciously identify the person's face, the usual emotional signal of familiarity is missing, leading them to conclude the person must be a double. Capgras delusion can occur after brain injury, stroke, or in some psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia. It illustrates how much our recognition of people depends not only on visual accuracy, but also on emotional memory, and how consciousness weaves these elements together to create the experience of knowing someone. The brain can delete certain faces from conscious recognition. Some brain injuries cause prosopagnosia, or face blindness, a condition in which people lose the ability to recognize familiar faces, even their own. The damage typically affects the fusiform gyrus, a brain region specialized for processing facial features. People with prosopagnosia can still see faces clearly and describe them in detail, but they cannot connect those visual impressions to an identity. They may rely on voice, clothing, or distinctive mannerisms instead. Interestingly, some patients show unconscious recognition. Their heart rate may change when they see a familiar face, suggesting that part of the brain still knows who it is, even if conscious awareness does not. This gap between perception and awareness shows how specialized and vulnerable certain aspects of consciousness can be. Damage to the fusiform gyrus can erase facial recognition ability. The fusiform gyrus, located in the temporal lobe, plays a central role in recognizing faces. Damage to this area, whether from stroke, head injury, or degenerative disease, can cause prosopagnosia. In severe cases, people cannot recognize close friends, family members, or even themselves in a mirror. Despite this, they can still identify objects and read facial expressions, indicating that face recognition is a highly specialized process, separate from other forms of visual processing. Some patients adapt by focusing on distinctive cues like hairstyles or voices. Studying fusiform gyrus damage not only helps in rehabilitation, but also deepens our understanding of how consciousness handles highly specific tasks within its broader framework of visual perception. Some people have no mental imagery, a condition called aphantasia. Aphantasia is the inability to form mental images in the mind's eye. People with this condition can describe objects, recall facts, and recognize faces, but they cannot visualize scenes, people, or places internally. For them, thinking about an apple might bring up facts: red, round, edible, but not an actual picture. Aphantasia can be lifelong or result from brain injury. Its discovery has reshaped how scientists think about imagination, memory, and consciousness, showing that vivid mental imagery is not universal. Despite lacking visualization, many people with aphantasia lead creative and successful lives, relying on other cognitive strategies. Others experience hyperphantasia with vivid, instant imagery. Hyperphantasia is the opposite of aphantasia, the ability to generate extremely vivid mental images that feel as real as looking at something directly. People with hyperphantasia can conjure detailed scenes, colors, and textures at will, often enhancing creativity in art, writing, or design. However, the intensity can sometimes be distracting, as the imagined world can compete with real-world attention. Studies suggest that hyperphantasia may involve greater activation in visual processing areas when imagining compared to the average brain. This variation in mental imagery ability shows that even something as private as visualization exists on a wide spectrum within human consciousness. Short-term memory can hold about 7 items at once. Short-term memory, also called primary or immediate memory, allows you to briefly store small amounts of information, like a phone number you've just heard, for several seconds. Psychologist George Miller's famous 1950s research suggested that the average capacity is about 7 items, plus or minus 2. This magic number can vary depending on the type of information and the individual. Chunking, grouping items into larger, meaningful units can extend this limit. For example, remembering 1492 as the year 1492 feels easier than recalling 4 separate digits. Short-term memory is vital for everyday tasks, from following a conversation to mental arithmetic. Without it, you couldn't bridge the gap between the past second and the next, making continuous thought nearly impossible. Working memory lets you manipulate information in real time. Working memory is like a mental workbench. It's not just about holding information, but actively using it. When you calculate a tip, follow multi-step directions, or compare options before making a choice, you're using working memory. It involves coordination between the prefrontal cortex, which manages attention and decision-making, and parietal regions, which handle spatial and numerical information. Working memory capacity varies between people and can be trained to some degree, though it's closely tied to overall cognitive performance. Disruption of working memory, from fatigue, stress, or brain injury, can make complex thinking and planning much harder. Long-term memories are stored in distributed brain networks. Unlike a computer that saves data in one location, the brain stores long-term memories across multiple regions. Visual aspects of a memory may be kept in the visual cortex, sounds in the auditory cortex, and emotions in the amygdala, all linked by the hippocampus, which helps organize and retrieve them. This distributed system makes memories more resilient. Damage to one area may erase certain details but leave others intact. However, it also means that recalling a memory is a reconstructive process, reassembling pieces from different locations. Each retrieval can subtly alter the memory, blending old information with new experiences. Emotional events are remembered more strongly than neutral ones. When something emotionally significant happens, whether joyful or traumatic, the amygdala sends signals to strengthen memory storage in the hippocampus. This biological priority makes evolutionary sense. Remembering emotionally charged events helps us repeat positive experiences and avoid dangers. Emotional memories often feel vivid and detailed, but they can also be distorted, with certain aspects exaggerated or others forgotten. Even decades later, such memories can trigger intense feelings as if they just occurred. This link between emotion and memory shows how consciousness doesn't store experiences evenly. It prioritizes what matters most for survival and identity. False memories can be planted through suggestion. Memory is not a perfect recording. It's a reconstruction that can be influenced by outside information. Experiments have shown that people can be led to remember events that never happened, simply through repeated suggestion or exposure to misleading details. These false memories can feel just as real and emotionally charged as genuine ones. In legal contexts, this has major implications for eyewitness testimony. The fact that our conscious recollections can be rewritten so easily reveals how malleable and fallible the mind's record of the past really is. Group recall can distort the original memory. When people remember events together, the discussion can subtly alter individual memories. This phenomenon, known as memory conformity, occurs because hearing others' versions can overwrite or blend with our own. Over time, a shared but inaccurate memory can emerge, especially if it feels socially reinforced. Group recall can make details more vivid but less accurate, creating confidence in false information. Such effects highlight that memory is a social as well as personal process, and our awareness of the past is often shaped by collective as much as individual recollection. Brain implants may one day restore lost memories. Researchers are developing neural prosthetics that can mimic the brain's memory encoding patterns. By recording the electrical activity in the hippocampus when memories are formed and then replaying those patterns, scientists have been able to boost recall in animal studies and early human trials. The goal is to help people with brain injuries, dementia, or other memory disorders regain lost function. While the technology is still experimental, it points toward a future where consciousness could be supported or repaired through direct brain-machine interaction, blurring the line between biological and, quote, artificial memory systems. Digital devices already extend the boundaries of human memory. Smartphones, computers, and the internet function as external memory storage, allowing us to offload vast amounts of information we no longer need to hold in our minds. Psychologists call this the Google effect. Knowing where to find information can reduce the effort to remember it directly. While this frees mental space for other tasks, it may also change how our brains prioritize and store information. Some researchers argue that we're becoming more reliant on collective, device-based memory, with consciousness adapting to a new, distributed form of recall that spans both mind and machine. Language may shape the structure of conscious thought. Different languages categorize and describe the world in unique ways, influencing how speakers perceive time, space, and relationships. For example, some languages use absolute directions north, south, instead of relative ones left, right, which can enhance navigational awareness. Others have multiple words for colors that English groups together, potentially sharpening color discrimination. This linguistic relativity, known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, suggests that consciousness is partly shaped by the language we speak, not just in vocabulary, but in the mental frameworks we habitually use. People who speak multiple languages may switch mental frameworks. Multilingual individuals often report feeling subtly different when using different languages, more formal in one, more expressive in another. Research shows that switching languages can also shift attention patterns, decision-making styles, and even emotional responses. This cultural frame switching happens because each language carries its own set of social norms, emotional associations, and thought patterns. For bilingual or multilingual people, consciousness may be more flexible, able to move between mental worlds simply by changing the words they use. bilingual brains may show delayed onset of dementia symptoms. Research has found that people who speak 2 or more languages may develop symptoms of dementia several years later than monolingual individuals. The mental effort of switching between languages strengthens executive control systems in the brain, building what scientists call cognitive reserve. This reserve doesn't prevent dementia itself, but it may help the brain compensate for damage longer, delaying noticeable decline. The benefit appears across different types of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease, and is independent of education level or cultural background. Lifelong bilingualism acts like mental exercise, keeping key neural pathways active and adaptable. While learning a second language later in life may not provide the same level of protection, it still engages the brain in ways that can promote long-term cognitive health and resilience. Inner speech activates similar brain regions as speaking out loud. When you talk to yourself silently in your head, your brain engages many of the same areas used in actual speech, including Broca's area, which plans speech production, and the auditory cortex, which processes sound. This inner speech can help with problem-solving, memory recall, and self-regulation, acting like a private coach or narrator. For some, inner speech is frequent and vivid. For others, it's rare or minimal. Studying inner speech helps researchers explore how consciousness manages internal dialogue and why this mental rehearsal can be as neurologically real as speaking aloud, just without the sound. Some people rarely experience an inner monologue. While many assume everyone has a constant voice in their head, some individuals experience little to no inner speech. Instead, their thoughts may take the form of images, abstract concepts, or non-verbal sensations. This difference doesn't appear to affect intelligence, but it does suggest that the way we experience consciousness varies widely. People without a strong inner monologue often rely on visual or sensory cues when planning or remembering, and may find verbal thinking more effortful. The diversity of these mental styles challenges the idea that there's a single, universal way to experience thought. Others have constant internal dialogue. At the other extreme, some people have a near constant stream of verbal thought, narrating their actions, analyzing events, or rehearsing conversations. This internal chatter can be useful for organization and decision-making, but it can also become overwhelming, contributing to anxiety or rumination. Brain imaging studies show that this constant dialogue engages language networks even at rest, particularly in the so-called default mode network. Understanding why some minds lean heavily on verbal thought while others barely use it offers insight into the wide spectrum of conscious experience. Meditation can change the physical structure of the brain. Long-term meditation practice has been linked to measurable changes in brain anatomy. MRI scans show increased thickness in areas related to attention, emotional regulation, and sensory processing, such as the prefrontal cortex and insula. These structural changes may support the improved focus, reduced stress, and enhanced emotional stability, often reported by experienced meditators. The brain's ability to reorganize itself in response to practice, neuroplasticity, means that regular mental training can leave lasting physical marks, much like exercise reshapes muscles. Long-term mindfulness practice can reduce activity in the default mode network. The default mode network, DMN, is a set of brain regions active when the mind wanders or focuses inward. Overactivity in the DMN is associated with rumination and self-referential thinking, which can contribute to anxiety and depression. Long-term mindfulness meditation has been shown to quiet this network, shifting brain activity toward areas involved in present moment awareness. This reduced DMN activity may help explain why mindfulness often leads to a calmer, more focused state of consciousness, less tangled in repetitive thought loops. Hypnosis can alter perception and pain sensitivity. Under hypnosis, some people can experience profound changes in perception. Colors may shift, sounds may fade, and even pain can be significantly reduced. Brain scans reveal altered activity in regions that process sensory input and regulate attention, suggesting hypnosis can modify how incoming information is interpreted. While not everyone is equally susceptible, those who are can undergo medical procedures with little or no anesthesia when hypnotized. This demonstrates how belief, focus, and suggestion can directly influence conscious experience. Placebo effects show that belief alone can shape experience. But the placebo effect occurs when a person experiences real changes in symptoms after receiving a treatment with no active ingredient, simply because they expect it to work. This isn't all in the mind. Brain scans show measurable changes in activity and even neurotransmitter release. Placebos can reduce pain, improve mood, and affect many other bodily functions. The effect underscores the powerful role that conscious belief and expectation play in shaping both perception and physical states. Some theories suggest consciousness is fundamental to the universe. While most scientists study consciousness as a product of the brain, some theories propose it as a basic feature of reality, like space or time. This perspective, found in philosophical ideas such as panpsychism, suggests that consciousness could exist in all matter to varying degrees. While controversial, these theories aim to address the hard problem of how subjective experience arises from physical processes. If true, consciousness wouldn't just be something brains do, it would be woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself. The mystery of consciousness remains unsolved. Despite decades of research, no single theory fully explains how subjective awareness emerges from the physical brain. Neuroscientists can map the brain regions involved in perception, memory, and decision-making, yet the leap from neural activity to the rich inner world we experience remains elusive. Consciousness research spans neuroscience, philosophy, physics, and artificial intelligence, each offering clues, but no final answer. For now, consciousness remains one of science's most profound mysteries, the study of the very thing doing the studying. And so, our quiet journey through the hidden landscapes of awareness comes to a close. We have wandered from the fragile moment a thought sparks in the brain, to the vast and puzzling questions about whether consciousness might be a fundamental part of the universe itself. We've explored the edges, where memory fades, where the sense of self can dissolve, and where awareness can blink away only to return in unexpected forms. Even now, as you lie here, the mind is still at work, breathing, sensing, weaving together these last impressions before letting them go. Your awareness may already be softening, the details blurring at the edges like fading dreams. Perhaps, when you wake, you'll remember a fact or two, or perhaps they will have drifted away, leaving only a gentle feeling that you've been somewhere vast and full of wonder. The mysteries remain, but for now, there is nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to hold on to. Let your thoughts slow, like leaves settling on still water. The day is done. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you. But if they're closed, stay there and let sleep take you the rest of the way.